Welcome back to Fox Explainer. Today I am going to show you a thriller movie from 2017 called Infidelity in Suburbia. Spoilers ahead. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Watch out and take care. The film begins with a couple passionately kissing, and as the man throws the woman on the bed, they are interrupted by the woman's son. The boy smiles as he shows them a dead mouse. The woman begins to scream. In the following scene, we see a boatyard where a family of 3 is preparing to launch their boat. Laura expresses interest in remodeling her kitchen, but her husband appears to be opposed to the idea. Then she instructs her son to be cautious with the knife. The husband then receives a phone call and walks away. Another man is staring at Laura as she walks with her belongings in her cart and slips, almost falling off. But the man comes to her aid, saving her from falling. Laura's husband returns after the man has left and hands her the newspaper with the headline "Arson on Denton Island." Meanwhile, their son Jamie slips over the edge and falls into the water. The same man comes to their aid once more, saving Jamie and returning him to his parents. Elliot, the man, introduces himself, and the parents thank him for his assistance. They then invite him to a family dinner, during which Laura discusses Elliot with her best friend Mira. She appears to be drawn to the man's physique. They then invite him inside to serve him dinner. He is completely enamored with one of Laura's paintings. This is when she reveals that she used to sell but that Greg converted her studio into a work shed. Throughout this, Greg is on the phone with his secretary, whom he appears to be flirting with. Elliot then offers to complete the renovation at family rates, which the family gladly accepts. The next day, while jogging with Mira, Laura and Mira discuss how hot Elliot is. When she arrives home, Elliot is standing shirtless in the yard. Laura approaches him and cannot take her gaze away from his body as he explains the renovation. She dashes upstairs for a shower. Elliot walks silently in front of the room while she is in the shower cabin. Later, Laura goes to the market to get some kitchen supplies, and Elliot appears behind her, complimenting her choice of design and then surprising her with a surprise. He makes her close her eyes and then gives her a delicious cannoli and a sip of juice, telling her it's from a bakery called Ludisa and that he used to go there with his mother. They are back at Laura's house when Mira arrives and notices Elliot working shirtless. She, too, is fascinated by him and begins questioning him about having girlfriends and his job. He informs her that he does not have a girlfriend but has his sights set on someone. Later, Laura and Elliot go to the boatyard to see if anyone attempted to break in. Under a cushion, she discovers purple-colored panties of a girl. She sobs with frustration. Elliot asks what's wrong, and she shows him the panties she discovered on the boat. The secretary suspects these are Hannah's pants. She then double-checks by looking at her dating profile, and these are indeed hers. She becomes agitated and sobs uncontrollably. Elliot transports her to his own boat and serves her a cup of coffee. He then encourages her to continue on her journey and find the next path. Laura leaves with a smile on her face, indicating that the two have some chemistry. Then we see Elliot crying as he looks at pictures of his mother. In the following scene, we see Laura questioning Greg about his activities the night before, asking him where he was. He claims to be at work and that he called Hannah to take notes. Greg then approaches her, but she pushes him away. Elliot arrives at Laura's house the next morning with the materials for the renovation. Laura returns from her jog to find Jamie conversing with Elliot. He appears to be excellent with children. Laura then invites him to join Mira and Charlie while she takes a shower. Elliot follows her to the bathroom and joins her in the shower cabin. He undresses, Lauren agrees, and they begin passionately kissing. Laura is at the boatyard in the next scene, where she sees various couples hugging each other before going to talk to her husband on their boat. Greg tells her about how teenagers nowadays sneak into various boats for sexual activities. Laura then mentions the purple underwear, to which Greg responds that it must be of some adolescent who also left the flap open. Laura is taken aback when Greg hugs her and confesses his feelings for her. Meanwhile, we see Elliot and Jamie playing in the yard. Laura arrives and invites Jamie to play with Charlie. She then takes Elliot with her and tells him that they must immediately stop what they are doing. Instead of listening to her, he begins seducing her. She tries to defend herself but eventually gives in. We then see Elliot sitting in his boat, cutting out Greg's face from Laura's photos. He replaces his face in the photos, which is extremely creepy. The next day, he goes to see Laura and offers her roses for her birthday, claiming to know everything about her. Laura looks at him puzzled, and when her husband arrives, he is surprised to see yellow roses, which are Laura's favorite. Greg then leaves for work, and Elliot enters Laura's home, where she chastises him for his actions. She tells him that she was mistaken about Greg and that she can no longer do this. She then asks him to leave the house because she no longer wants him to work there. Elliot begins to shiver in agony, and the scene fades out. She then goes to Jamie and informs him that Elliot is no longer alive. However, the next thing we see him doing is stalking Laura in the yard. Laura then gets dressed up and walks outside. There is a group of people waiting for her, and they surprise her with a birthday party. She thanks everyone and kisses her husband as Elliot watches. Meanwhile, Hannah arrives and tells Laura how excited Greg was to plan all of this, and how he had her work late to ensure everything went perfectly. Greg introduces Elliot to Hannah, and she begins to look at him seductively. But Elliot can't take his gaze away from Laura. He excuses himself, but the ladies pursue him. Hannah tries to talk to him, but he barely responds, his gaze fixed on Laura. Hannah follows him after the party and asks him to accompany her. Laura, on the other hand, is in bed with Greg and decides to confess what she did to Elliot. Greg, on the other hand, stops her and tells her that she is amazing. He continues to compliment her, and they are flirting. Elliot, on the other hand, drags Hannah to the boat and throws herself onto him. But Hannah notices that he isn't interested because he isn't even turned on. When she notices Laura's pictures on the wall, she becomes irritated and gets up to leave. He begins calling Elliot names and strangles her from behind. Laura is watering the plants the next morning when Greg comes by and says nice things to her. He tells her that after the trip, they will have more time for each other, and they kiss. Elliot is present in the house and is envious of them. Laura then visits the work shed and discovers that it has been converted into a studio. She discovers canvases all over the place. Elliot and Laura Forever, however, is written on every canvas. Laura is perplexed by the situation until she hears Jamie scream. He tells her that Elliot was here when she finds him in the yard. Laura rushes outside and runs into Elliot. She tells him to leave them alone and not to surprise them any further. Elliot is obsessed with her and insists that she and Greg are over. His continued obsession turns into forceful behavior, and he holds her forcefully, causing Laura to scream, and Jamie witnesses the entire scene. Elliot lets go of Laura and leaves the house when he sees him out there. Laura visits Elliot's website that night and reads the reviews about his work. She discovers a disturbing remark from a purple wallflower claiming Elliot destroyed her life. Laura leaves for Denton Island and goes to a shop the next morning. She approaches the proprietor and requests a purple wallflower. The shopkeeper mentions a woman named Willie Hamill. Laura goes to the woman's house after the man gives her the address. When she speaks with her, she reveals that Elliot cost her everything, including her marriage and family, and she claims that Elliot is insane. She requests that Laura investigate what he did to his own mother. Hannah's body is discovered in the water in the following scene. Mira and Bill are watching the news on TV and attempting to contact Greg. Elliot appears behind Greg just as he is about to answer the phone, and the scene fades out. Laura, on the other hand, awakens from her sleep, looking terrified and anxious. She walks downstairs with a baseball bat in her hand, constantly hearing something breaking in the house. She enters the kitchen and finds the same cannoli Elliot once made for her. Then she discovers a completely smashed window frame. Greg is tied to a pole in the boat in the following scene. He manages to free himself and attempts to flee, but is hit by Elliot. Laura, on the other hand, speaks with Mira and expresses her concern about Greg's disappearance. She then informs Mira that she had an affair with Elliot and that he is now completely obsessed with her. Mira then advises her to exercise caution around this individual. Laura then goes to the bakery and talks to the elderly lady behind the counter. She notices a memory wall with picture frames. The old lady there tells Elliot about how he used to come there with his mother when he was a child. Unfortunately, Elliot's mother never had a faithful husband, and this had a significant impact on him, shaping him into the man he is today. But things went from bad to worse when he set fire to the entire house. Laura becomes even more terrified as she listens to the story and immediately stands up. As she prepares to leave, the old woman informs her that Elliot arrived in the morning and informed her that he is going to marry a widow and become a stepfather. She dashes home and, to her horror, finds Elliot waiting for her. Laura inquires about Greg's whereabouts, but he becomes physical and begins physically abusing her, brutalizing her. Jamie arrives, but he is turned away. He then drags Laura into her bedroom. He ties Laura up, but she manages to free herself. She then confesses her feelings for Elliot and tells him she has realized how much she adores him. Elliot then unees her completely and the two of them go downstairs to eat dinner. Jamie is chained downstairs, but Laura still invites him to eat and play. When Mira and Bill arrive, Laura attempts to walk toward the window. Elliot discovers the truth just in time and forces both son and mother to accompany him upstairs to the bedroom. Elliot picks up Jamie and takes him outside so he can spend some time alone with Laura. Laura tries to flee, but he grabs her on the bed and begins raping her. As he climbs on top of Laura, Jamie enters the room, and Elliot experiences a flashback to his own childhood. He phases out, and Laura, seizing the opportunity, hits him and flees. Laura then forces Jamie to flee for his life, while Elliot awakens and terrorizes Laura. He throws her to the ground and hits her on the head with a hammer. In the following scene, we see him transporting a body in a sack to the boat. Laura quickly cuts the sack with a knife and flees. She comes face to face with Elliot there. She stabs him and flees. She then follows a blood trail and comes across Greg unconscious. She calls the Coast Guard for assistance, but the call is not answered. Laura, on the other hand, springs up and hits Elliot. She tries to flee, but Elliot pursues her. He catches her in an upstairs room with a window, and she pushes him out of it, crashing down. Elliot hits his head and dies. Laura's family is seen together and happy in the final scene. Surprisingly, she opens the fridge and discovers a delicious cannoli inside, brought by Greg. This is the end of the film. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe for more and hit the like button to help me out, and also leave a comment if you want me to explain your favorite film. Until next time, take care.